Hey, this is Jeremy Haun, creator of Image Comics, The Realm, and The Beauty. I'm here with Southern Fried Geekery Podcast.
1, 2,
3. Roll out in. I'm just going to do a hard open. 5, 4, 3. God damn it, Craig.
I'm 12 years old.
You
said hard, and I laughed.
Hard open.
And I snickered. So I was gonna try to count us into that, but I'm just not. So hey, everybody, welcome to the Southern Fried Geekery Podcast. We were gonna be professionals, and then that just kind of fell apart right then and there, and that's okay because we got a good laugh out of it. As per usual, I am Caleb Alexander McKenzie.
Matt Trogdon.
I'm Craig Lance.
And if I did my math right, if I counted on all my toes and my fingers and other peripheral body parts, I think this is episode 103 that we're on now. We 103 episodes. As Craig thoughtfully and correctly reminded us last week, one more episode is our 2 full whole ass years of doing this. So,
God damn.
Yeah.
Whole ass years.
Whole ass years.
Was one of them a leap year? Was that a thing? Did I make that up?
I don't know.
I don't know.
Either way.
Yeah.
It's 104 weeks next week. So
That's a lot
close
of
enough.
That's a lot of dedication.
It is.
It's a lot of time.
It is a lot of time.
Yeah.
Putting up with your guys'
We should
comments
quit.
every
Did you hear the effort in that? That is a
Well, I was just
lot
thinking
of
about my
time.
comments about your guys' taste this week and and the struggle I've had.
We're gonna team. Me and Matt will team up against you.
That's
We
okay.
will find a common bond, and we will run you out. For those of you who are new to the show, we would like to welcome you. Thanks for dropping in. Thanks for listening to us. We hope you enjoy our show. You might be asking what we are. Well, we're a lot of things, but mainly we're just a comic book and comic centric podcast. We like to get around the table as friends and chat about some of the stuff that we've read over the past week. Chat about some stuff that's going on in the world. Just kind of bond and shoot the shit together, and we do it every week. So every Sunday, if you're looking for a new podcast episode, look forward to us because it's going to happen. With that being said, we are going to be talking about some books that are relatively newer. So if you maybe haven't read these books or they're on your to-read stack, you just hadn't got to them yet because you're a busy person in a busy world, and that's totally cool. Just know that we're going to talk about some stuff that might be a little spoilers for you. So if you we're going to say what we're going to talk about, and if you haven't quite gotten there yet, just hit the little pause button and come back and listen to it later because we would love to know what you think. And you can tell us what you think, how you recognize that there was a spoiler warning that was just given, and then you went and read your books, and then you came back by coming to our little Facebook page where we have a little group on, and we're chatting it up with everybody all day long, every day. It's awesome. It's wonderful. Lots of things, lots of ideas being spread around, some better than others, but you'll have that. So, but we would love it if you would join us there to just kind of become part of the community. It's fun. It's awesome. So with that being said, the way we like to begin our show, every show kind of is, how you go to like Waffle House or IHOP?
No.
You know how you go to IHOP? That was a hard no against Waffle House. What did Waffle House do to you?
they are in business.
Whenever I forget I'm in the South, all I ever have to do is go to a Waffle House, and I will be quickly reminded that I am in a meth-addled area of the
Waffle
South.
House is amazing at 4 a.m. though.
I mean, I enjoy Waffle House, but it is very
But
southern.
your judgment is not.
No, well, number one, if I'm in a Waffle House at 4 a.m., I've consumed like criminal amounts of alcohol. And so at that moment in time, it's wonderful. It's the best place on earth. It's like Christmas all year long with the little yellow and, puke in the corner. There's a guy passed out in the bar. It is wonderful. It's a great place. And they make hash browns there. So I likes it. But, if you go to one of these places and you order a short stack, what they bring you is 3 pancakes, 3 wonderfully, wonderfully griddled pancakes. And so with that in mind, and considering the fact that our podcast is called Southern Fried Geekery, we like to drop short stacks every week, and we're going to tell you 3 things that we read this week. Might have enjoyed them, might have not have. Just kind of get the ball rolling. So we'll start with we'll go with Craigery on this one. What'd you read this week, brother?
Well, I'm going to stay on the DC Comics Tales from the Dark multiverse train. Teen Titans Judas Contract by Kyle Higgins, Matt Grom, Tom Rainey, and Hi-Fi. Basically, this book explores what happens when Tara decides to quit, number 1, sleeping with, and 2, helping Deathstroke, which they didn't touch on the sleeping with in this book. and instead decided the world would be better if she just took over.
We just kind of ignoring that Deathstroke's a pedophile.
Yes.
Okay.
Nowadays we ignore.
I just read that
comics.
story last night.
Really?
Yes.
Were you doing like research on the Judas contract?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Christ.
You didn't
Yeah.
realize Deathstroke was a pedophile? Straight up a pedo.
Damn.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, we kind of ignore that nowadays, but yeah, he totally slept with Tara back in the day.
Yep.
When she was 16.
Mm-hmm. Naughty.
Yeah, that was George Perez was on that book. I
He
think.
drew it.
Anyway, so she pretty much takes over the DC universe, and since she has the power to control rocks, she, her biggest challenge, of course, would be Superman. But when you can gather rocks from anywhere, flying kryptonite
Kind of just shows up.
Yeah, it did Superman in. It was pretty awesome. Next book was Deadly Class number 42, Image Comics, Rick Remender and Wes Craig. This school is a school where you're forced to rely on your brute strength and your cunning, or if you only have one of those, rely on it heavily. Mm-hmm. One of the main protagonists in this book, he relies on his cunning through the whole thing, and he's had this girlfriend through the whole thing that just has kind of latched on to him and been, acting like she's been dictating what's happening, but it's all been him. Well, he decided to put an axe in her forehead in this issue, and she fell into the bonfire, and somebody walks up and says, well, what happened here? He goes, apparently we broke up. So that was the main reason that was on here. Also, Marcus, the main antagonist or protagonist. Did I call the other one a protagonist? I meant antagonist. Marcus, the main protagonist of this book, saves the world by destroying a radio that's stuck on 8-track with a Fleetwood Mac 8-track in it.
Bless that man.
Don't be hating on. I love Stevie Nicks. You can't hate Stevie Nicks.
And lastly,
I don't hate Stevie Nicks. For the record.
Okay.
I don't hate Fleetwood Mac. I saw him in concert and I liked it. But could you imagine being at a party in the 80s and the only thing playing is Fleetwood Mac?
I hung out with almost exclusively lesbians in 2008, so yes, I can.
Okay, well, there you go.
Understand what that's like.
A lot of other things happened in the 80s and make that easy.
Yeah, a lot of cocaine and drugs going around. So the other book, which I figure might be on one of your guys's, is Harley Quinn's Villain of the Year, DC by Mark Russell, Mike Norton, and Hi-Fi. Mark Russell just continues to show that he understands and comics and is well read on comics as anybody in the business right now. His insights into this are just amazing.
Yeah, I didn't pick that one up.
Well, this was an interesting one, as far as showcasing his talent, because this is basically a chore or a task he was given. Like, here's what the fans voted, write dialogue with it. So it was interesting on that note. This isn't something he built from the ground up. It was like showing what he could do.
Well, for one of them, the best return villain or whatever they called it was Catwoman. And she's like, wait, where did I go? Did I go somewhere?
I dig the creative team. I love Mike Norton's work as well. I'm not, the subject matter I didn't pick it up.
It was really funny. You can borrow mine if you
it's
want
Mark
to.
Russell, so I knew it was going to be. So on the scale of Mark Russell, from Mark Russell over here to the left to Mark Russell over here to the right, where would you say it lands on the Mark Russell?
About a 9.8. It
9.8
was really funny.
It was fun to read. Yeah,
Yeah.
it was cool.
I mean, there's nothing super deep in it. He kind of pokes fun of everything going on in DC Comics right now. He pokes fun a little bit at the Tom King Batman going on right now without being
a dick
about it. He just kind of pokes fun at it.
Oh, so he's not you guys?
And
That's why he makes the money and we don't.
Yeah, no one's paying me to be funny.
Yeah.
Anyways, it was just a good, fun read.
Yeah. If we had written that, the whole comic would have just been angry venting, a lot of grunts.
Tasteless. You're tasteless. I hopefully Lily Guy is going to pick that book up.
I'm sure she will. If not, she can read mine over Christmas.
Speaking of Lily,
Yeah.
I have a question. I saw something on the Facebooks.
Yeah. Lily is soon to be my daughter-in-law.
Congratulations to both Lily and Zane. That's awesome.
They got engaged last week, I want to say. So congrats to them.
Nice.
Happy for them. And look forward to, a long life with this new daughter in my life. And You know?
Well, congratulations to your whole family because she's just a gem. She really is.
She is.
Awesome. Matt, what did you read?
So starting off, I read Marvel's True Believers Annihilation, Annihilus. This is a reprint of Fantastic Four number 140. Now, this is from 1961. I'm going to bring that up again. Written by...
Put a pin in that.
Yeah, Jerry Conway, illustrated by John Buscema and Joe Sinnott, and colored by George Rozos, whatever. So I bring this up. This is, apparently there's this True Believers line that's come out, and it's basically back matter for the Annihilation storyline that's coming up for Marvel. And I always buy the True Believers because they're a buck, and it's interesting for me to go back and read the old stories. Yeah. So reading this, and this is another one, I'm like, what? Let me read a quote from the thing in here.
What year did you say this was from?
1961.
61, and it was Fantastic Four what?
Number 140. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
So the Fantastic Four make an appearance in here, and Mr. Fantastic is looking a little down in the mouth. And quote the thing, Medusa's right, Stretcho. You'll look about as happy as a preacher at an orgy.
Wow.
Yeah, 1961, Fantastic Four. I give you.
Who would you say was writing that?
Mr. Jerry Conway.
Bless that man.
The classic
Preacher at an orgy.
Yeah, like a preacher at an orgy. Fantastic Four, 1961. That I read that 3 times.
If it had been a priest of Thor, he would have been happy to be at an orgy.
Of course. Yeah.
What number did you say that was?
Well, a lot of Christian priests would be happy to be at an orgy.
142. Yeah, no doubt.
What year did the Fantastic Four debut?
Yeah, that's what I was questioning. I thought it was 1963, but
this what maybe reading the, yeah. Well, okay, so 1961, the Fantastic Four debuted. This is issue number 140.
Okay,
yeah,
okay.
I wrote that down wrong.
1973. Sorry,
Yeah.
I had to go to the Googles. No, I didn't. I was
either way. That is still for the time period.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that's not one of those things that actually matters. I don't want to be one of those guys that's like, well, actually, I don't want to do that. I was just like, in my brain, I was like, did the Fantastic Four kick off in the 50s?
Yeah,
that.
No, I'm glad you corrected me. Yeah, because I don't want that to be hanging out there for people to make comments.
No, I just derailed everything, and I'm so sorry.
Also, I read DC Comics Batman's Grave number 3.
What year did that come out?
This one. Yeah. I think this one came out in 1955. Warren Ellis, Brian Hitch, Kevin Nolan, and Alex Sinclair. This is awesome. Man, this is a great freaking series. I love reading Warren Ellis and how he writes Batman and how he writes Alfred. And he's fully embraced the snarky Alfred. At one point, have you read?
I haven't read this issue. No.
I think it might have been number 2, but in one exchange, Batman, they're in the Batcave, and Bruce says, you've slept very little in the past few days. He said, how is it that you're operating this well? And he says, well, Master Bruce, I have a monstrous cocaine habit. and there's a great panel where Bruce just looks at him, and he's like, working with you for the past so years, I've developed an ability to operate on 4 hours of sleep or something like that. Really great little interchanges between them. And it's a very, it's a very much detective story.
Nice.
But the way he writes Batman is just, it's different. It's interesting. It's very,
Warren Ellis-y?
No, it's not,
really?
Actually. It's not an angst Batman. It's a detective Batman.
Yeah, that's what I've liked about this series, is that it's for the first time in a long time we're actually getting a detective story in Batman.
I remember Warren Ellis wrote a 007 story a couple years ago.
Excellent.
A Varger or something like that. Yeah. And I remember thinking then, I was like, I would love it to get Warren Ellis on Batman, because it felt like a Batman story, but it was 007. So I think it's...
Yeah, that 007 run was killer.
Yeah.
And I've never had a history of much interest in 007.
Well, then Dynamite ran it into the ground with all the other people.
Man, they milked the hell out of that.
They do
Christ
that.
almighty.
That happens.
So number 3 for me was Image. Reaver number 6.
Yeah, buddy.
Justin Jordan, Rebecca Isaacs, and Alex Guillermez. This was fucking metal as hell, man. This last issue was amazing. This was just kick ass, man. I love this shit.
Spoiler alert, this book's probably going to be on our end of the year awards.
It very possibly. I could see it being on a couple of different lists.
Yeah.
Read this book, kids.
Yeah.
It's good for you.
Well, and I'm a Patreon of Justin Jordan. Huh?
A patron?
Well, it's on the Patreon app, so I don't know what you call it.
You're a patron on the Patreon.
I was just trying another way to
Yeah.
say it. You went too. I was going to throw in another one.
Yeah, however you say it. Anyways, on
Craig throws money at someone on the internet.
Most people are like, you mean Patron?
anyway, so Justin Jordan, one of the level I'm on, I get signed copies of everything he gets in a month, and he puts a little letter in there about what's going on with his work, and just so you know, this book is doing so well that he said it's already been approved for at least 2 more arcs, and he wants it to go up to it past 25, which is his longest running single story. You know, Luther Strode, I think, had more issues, but it was done in story blocks.
Strode had 18 issues total.
Did it? Okay, so
maybe
25 was the strain. No,
yeah, not strain. Spread.
the spread.
Yeah.
Yes, was 25 issues. So he wants this issue.
That he did with Kyle Stram.
Yeah, Kyle Stram. Yeah. So it appears to, and if it stays on the level it's on, there's no reason why it should fall off. I mean, that last
stunning.
issue, like Matt said,
There it
was
is. Fucking metal, dude.
blood and violence,
Sorcery
and
and
axes, and
you know, and just clever twists, clever, like characters are smarter than you thought they were type
I was
thing.
a little sad at the end of it.
Yeah, it was depressing.
Yeah.
Metal and depressing and just, it was hella
People
good.
you wanted to live are questionable now.
No, see, I didn't have that problem. I was like, no, fuck you. You get to die for my cause. Like, yeah.
Yeah, but you're talking about that one specific character.
That'd be all right. I mean, look, the comics.
Well, we don't know if she made it or not.
Yeah.
We'll just leave it.
Well, in the first issue, I remember reading the first issue, he said he had his plan for the second arc was he's going to described it as a
The Magnificent Seven or something.
this he described as
Okay.
the Dirty Dozen.
Gotcha.
The second arc he described as a crime noir, which sounds fucking fascinating.
I'm giddy.
Crime noir in this kind of environment.
Yeah.
Hell yeah.
I wants it real bad. Hey, Craig dropped an important note. So before I drop my 3, I want to allude on that a little bit. He said that this might be your pick on our end of the year show. And it very could be when we go to recap our favorite things of 2019. And I want to throw out there for anybody who's listening to this podcast, and hopefully there are lots of you, that we also want your voice. Like, you get to listen to us do this all the time, and that's great, and we really appreciate it. But we want to add some more, we want to add other voices when we do our 2019 recap. It's not just us, it's also you guys. So if you go to either our Twitter page, which is at SFG Podcast, or you go to our Facebook group, which all you got to do is search Southern Fried Geekery Podcast on the Facebooks, and become part of that community. You will find links that you can throw your vote in there. So you can go fill out this little form. All you got to do is sign up. You put in your email address. It saves your answers. So if you read something else in the next 2 weeks, you want to go back and change it, you can do that. But you get to go in there. You get to inject your opinion into our show. And, we're going to go by the highest votes, but the highest votes will get a shout out on the show. And we're really excited about that. So please do that. It'll help us out. Also lets us know what maybe we should be reading, because we feed off each other a lot, right? So we, getting a new voice in there.
Well, we're a bit of a 3-man echo chamber. We tend to have a lot of the same likes and dislikes, except for Batman.
and Watchmen.
And Watchmen.
And One Piece.
But so yeah, it's always nice to get outside influence into what we should and shouldn't be reading.
So yeah, please go do that. You can aid me in helping spread
Also,
the gospel.
if Immortal Hulk's not on your list, you're wrong.
Very, very valid point. I mean, that's actually, I'm going to go change the title of the form that just says if Immortal Hulk's not on your list, you're wrong. Speaking of Immortal Hulk and list, you know what Immortal Hulk and you know what list that was on?
Your short stack?
It was on my short stack. It was actually number 3. I was going to wait, but that was just too beautiful of a, you led me to the water and I'm going to drink. So Immortal Hulk number 28 by Al Ewing.
You don't drink water. If it's not bourbon or beer, you're not drinking it. Who are you lying
That
to?
is
Coffee.
That's not.
Caleb's playing a character. You understand this is a character.
You broke kayfabe, you piece of shit. Where was I? Oh yeah, Immortal Hulk number 28, written by Al Ewing, guest artist on this, and I was very excited. I knew this was coming down the pipeline. I just didn't know we were going to get it. But Mr. Tom Riley and on the arts alongside Mateus Baraga, and Chris O'Halloran is doing the color duties on that. I absolutely love this book. For starters, I love Tom Riley's art. I met Tom in Chicago last year, got a Conan piece by him. Love the work that this dude is doing. Was very saddened when his first kind of big book got canceled for the actions of somebody else. And I'm glad to see I'm glad to see him get injected into Marvel and also into a killer story. Fun fact, this was one of 2 books I read that had Tom Riley in it this week, because he was also in the Thor little one-shot that had different Thor stories. Yeah, that one. I'm glad I couldn't pull that name out of my hat.
Actually, it was the Worthy Thor is what it was.
But he did the art on one of those stories and drew some awesome Beta Ray Bill. So I can't wait to see him get more work. Once again, this storyline by Al Ewing. This one takes more of a public interest slant to where some of the other stuff has been horror or crime or something else. I dug it. I dug it a lot. Very much current events that ties into the world that we live in. Next but not least, I remember how last week I said I didn't have a lot of time to read a lot of comics. I did not have that problem this week. I read I think I counted up something like 60 odd single issues over the past 3 days. It was wonderful. I did it in sweatpants. It was glorious. So I'm also still pushing my way through the Sandman Omnibus. And I got to Sandman number 15 by Neil Gaiman, Mike Dringenberg, Malcolm Jones III, Robbie Bush. Obviously, when you talk about this book, you have to mention that it was edited by Karen Berger, who is just a pioneer and a wealth of greatness. And this story thus far, is one of my favorite single issues of this entire set. This is the story that explores the dreams of Rose's roommates, and where she becomes the vortex that she's kind of breaking down the walls of this group dream cult. Mm-hmm. The layouts in this book are insane, and I love it. This is at the moment I'm trying to think of what my top 5 single issues of that if I had to teach a class on what you could do with visual imagery and iconography in comics. I think this might be on that syllabus. Because it was awesome.
Well, one of the beautiful things about Sandman is it does change artists quite a bit throughout the story, but it does it fairly seamlessly.
Yeah.
You don't really note. I mean, you can tell, but it's the layouts, the design of the books stay so similar. But yeah, that's a beautiful issue.
Well, and the way that they utilize graphic design in that, it works so well. I mean, in this particular issue, you've got this married couple that are Ken and Barbie. And, they're sleeping together, and Ken is dreaming, and he's having these really, dark web, money, sex, power fantasies that show up in, green and digital text, and his, Barbie's over here dreaming about being a princess in a magical land. The way they're juxtaposed on the page, it was brilliant. Just pure brilliance. Mm-hmm. This story, I'm saddened that I waited so long to read it, but I'm actually really glad I waited till now, because I think I appreciate it more than I would have appreciated it as a younger man.
It's about time for me to go through another read through of Sandman.
It's so good. It's so good.
It's one of those books about every 10 years you should read.
Mm-hmm. Last but not least, a book that may very well end up on my best of the year lists. That is The Plot number 3. It comes out of Vault Comics, and this is written by Tim Daniel and Michael Morrissey, art by Josh Hickson. Jordan Boyd does the colors, and Jim Campbell's also working on this book. This is one of the most haunting stories I've read all year, and as I'm reading it, I keep going back, and I tweeted at the creative team this past week. Seriously, one of the most intriguing, engaging, and provocative horror stories that I've enjoyed since Harrow County, and it's only the 3rd issue. So, and I just found out this week that it is getting a 2nd arc. If you like ghost stories, if you like textual stories, this is for you. It's so good. I can't proclaim the glory of this book enough. It's called The Plot. Check it out. It's good stuff. I likes it.
Awesome.
All right, we ready to break down a big book?
A big book? Yeah.
Well, not necessarily a big book, but a big book for us. So let's just kind of bring the main course to the table. So the way we do things is, on a comics episode, we all 3 read the same book, or whoever's going to be on the show reads the same book. And that way we can kind of break it down and discuss it, kind of bounce the ideas off each other. And then we're going to bring our own books to the table that the others may or may not have read. But we really like getting into we'll call it the meat and potatoes of a story that we all have an opinion on. And so that's what we're going to do that here. And this book, it's a new comic. It's something it's a first issue, and it's from a creator that we all know, but it's a different take for him. And that book is none other than The Red Mother. And this comes out of Image Comics.
Nope,
wrong. I'm
Boom
sorry.
Studios.
Boom Studio. Let me reverse that. My deepest apologies. The Red Mother comes out of Boom Studios, and this is written by, like I said, Jeremy Haun. You might know his work from books like The Beauty and The Realm. It's drawn amazingly by Danny Luckert, who I knew I recognized his style, but I wasn't sure where, so I had to do some Google sleuthing. He did Regression with Cullen Bunn, which was a weird and fun.
It was a really good story.
Yeah, it's just kind of bonkers all over the place. And Mr. Ed Dukeshire on the letters. So that's where we're going. So if you haven't read that yet, again, spoiler warnings, go check it out, because this is going to be a fun series. Jeremy's work, as always, was very intriguing, and I really dug the story. So if you guys are okay with it, I'll do the breakdown on this. Kind of go into it.
Yeah,
Yeah.
sure.
Yeah.
That'd be great, because I didn't write a
Yeah,
synopsis.
I wasn't prepared to, so that works out well for me too.
I want to redeem myself from last week, where we kind of shoehorned Matt into into that role. So
Browbeat him into it.
voluntold. So you guys know the phrase "seeing red," right? You've heard that phrase. It usually describes like this ocular phenomenon. Normally, it's associated with like this major emotional reaction, usually anger. But if Star Wars has taught us anything, it's that fear and anger are like borderline inseparable emotions. They feed into one each other.
Anger is a mask emotion.
It is, and so it kind of builds on itself. Well, the reason I mention that is like that's a good way to enter the story, is in the understanding of what it might be to see red. So we have our main character, and her name is Daisy McDonough, and she at the moment has got a problem with seeing red. Even worse, she's seeing things through the red, things that she's not supposed to see, these dark things, these evil things, these things that they just haunt her. But this hasn't always been her case, though. This is a relatively new phenomenon. Daisy was happy once. Her future looked great. She was successful, had an awesome career. She was like an app developer or something. Her best friend, Pari, just invited her on an international trip. She was going to get to do some traveling. She had a boyfriend that, the kind of relationship that the boyfriend just looks at her like she was the only thing in the world that mattered. I mean, this was a burgeoning, deep, and happy love. I mean, her life was really excellent. It was going great. Everything was on track. So what happened? What went wrong? Why is she find herself now at a later date, dealing with psychiatrists and seeing red and not knowing what's happening and kind of losing her mind? She's noticing these really dark and macabre things through this wash of red. Well, let's explore that. That's what this book does. It opens up on kind of a normal night, just kind of a mundane. Let's call it a Tuesday. It's date night. I mean, this is not a momentous occasion.
I just like the way you go, let's call it a Tuesday.
It's a Tuesday. I mean, you don't talk
There
about
were
like it's just a
tacos
Tuesday.
involved. We'll call it Tuesday.
What'd you do last night? I mean, it was a Tuesday. So Daisy and her man Luke, they've gone out. They've stuffed themselves with some pizza. They got that good. They're probably no pineapples on it. They're just having themselves a nice stroll through the city. They're trying to walk off some of the pizza calories.
Remember what I said about taste?
Oh, wait, time out. Are you pro pineapple or anti-pineapple?
I am pro pineapple.
I'm pro pineapple.
Okay.
I was just throwing that. I just think it's a funny joke. I actually don't mind pineapple. Ham and pineapple on pizza is actually really
Character,
good.
Craig.
Gotcha.
Character.
Let me know when you're playing a character when you're really you.
If I find that out someday, I'll extend that to you guys.
Years of therapy that's going to take.
I've got to get a big boy job so I can afford that therapy. All right, so our couple, they've got a belly full of pie, and they're just kind of walking it off around the city. And my man Luke, he's smooth as shit. He's like, "Hey, you want to go back to my place?" And Daisy, she just lays it out. She's like, "Bruh, I just ate a whole fucking pizza. I'm like greasy and cheesy. I probably got a fart. You really want sexy times right now?" And my dude doesn't miss a beat. Luke's just like, "Yes, sir." And I mean, you know what? She's down with that. And I'm just saying that's beautiful. And when you have that good pizza after pizza sex, it's wonderful. That relationship, it's gonna last. It's gonna go somewhere. If you get someone who wants to throw down and get nasty after a pizza feast, you got to marry that person. I mean, that's real talk. That's advice from a professional. So after they're walking back to Luke's place, they're getting ready to just go at it, just have some greasy, nasty, cheesy pizza sex. They walk past this walled off city park area. I mean, you know the type, right? It's It's got like the waist high block walk. It's topped by a metal fence. There's like a wrought iron gate. Looks like it probably should have been a cemetery, kind of. I mean, honestly, if we're telling the truth, there's probably a grave back there. So as the couple is walking by, this kind of howl, this visceral sound comes out of the darkness beyond the gate. And the noise, as you might imagine, it catches Luke's attention. And Luke's got to do this whole, like, what the fuck was that? I got to go check this out. Daisy tells him, hey, like, bruh, none of our business. Let's go have pizza sex. Come on, let's go. And he's not hearing her, though. I mean, physically. He's not physically hearing her. He's kind of entranced. His eyes are deadlocked on the gate, and he starts walking towards it. And as he gets right up to the gate, he just gets right there. You hear Luke say this phrase, yes, mother. Who the fuck is this dude talking to? And then he's sucked into the shadows and just starts screaming. And of course, Daisy, as a good, a decent human being, a good girlfriend, somebody who's concerned about her lover, her first reaction is kind of running after him. I mean, she just saw him get sucked into the gate. But right as she gets to the gate, something, and we really don't know what it is, but something kind of streaks past her, and like Luke comes out of the shadows and gets almost out, but then gets sucked back in. And as the thing like goes past her, it rips her fucking eyeball out of her skull. Like it just like you can't see what it is. She's just left there with kind of a Cyclops look on her face. It's very stunned. It's unexpected events just occurred. And all she can see before she blacks out is this red. That's all that's there for her. So Daisy wakes up as you kind of do when you get knocked out. She's in the hospital. Her head's wrapped in gauze. There are nurses involved. Some kids apparently had found her and they got her to the hospital. In effect saving her life, I'm sure. And as she comes to, there are some detectives that are there and they need to talk to her about these events. No one seems to know what happened, and there's not any sign of Luke. He's just gone. They've been to the park. They've investigated the crime scene. There's a sign of a struggle. Obviously, there's some of her blood there, but you can expect when an eyeball leaves your skull. But there's no Luke. He's gone. And so Daisy tells the detectives what she remembers. But look, I mean, real talk, this is a pretty unbelievable story, right? If you're in the real world and this is the story you're telling, cops aren't going to believe you. Objectively speaking, what facts do they have to go off of? You've got a young woman. She's been found brutalized in a park. There's signs of a fight. There's no witness. There's no boyfriend. You get why they might be skeptical as they lean into this investigation. As you might imagine, all of this plays hell on Daisy's mental health. So 2 days ago, life was great. She's laying there with 50% less eyeball now. She's very scared. She's got no boyfriend. She's been the victim of an assault. There's the authorities don't fully believe her accounting of this event. And so what does she do? She starts self-medicating. She's popping painkillers. She's isolating herself. She's starting to go on this kind of downward spiral. And things look like they might be leveling off for her eventually. She's starting to get her feet back under her as much as she can. She's been a victim of a traumatic event, but she's starting to kind of move on with her life. She goes to this optometrist, I'm assuming is an optometrist, who he hooks her up with a prosthetic eyeball. She's starting to get some sense of self back when she looks at herself in a mirror. She's starting to recognize herself in a way that you have to do to be able to move on from these traumatic events. But her bestie, her pal, her friend who was going to take her on this trip, Perry, she had to go do the trip for business, but she's gotten back on all this, so she's coming to check on her friend. Immediately jumps back into bestie mode. It's just kind of like when I'm down and Craig's been on a trip and he comes back and tells, like, he just immediately comes over. We sit in the living room floor in our pajamas and we talk. That's what we do. So she gets back into that groove, and it's a little bit too much too fast for our girl, though. Post-traumatic stress is real. When Perry pushes Daisy to talk, she starts to have this kind of emotional breakdown. And of course, what does she do? She goes immediately to the self-medication. She washes down a couple of pills with a nice glass of red wine. All of a sudden, her vision just does that same thing again. It just washes over in red. So she pops a few more pills. She pops a little bit more. She drinks a little bit more wine, which I hope it's a good cab. Good for her. What we're seeing here is a development of a pattern of addictive self-medicating behavior. And obviously, as a friend, Perry is concerned, and she has to kind of have one of those uncomfortable conversations with Daisy. But she does. And as a friend, Daisy hears her. And so Daisy does the smart thing, and she starts to go to a counselor, which I highly recommend to anyone and everyone. She starts working through her stuff. Whether you need it or not. No, flat out. I think, honestly, like, if you get once a year, just go sit down and talk to a counselor, even if you're not having trouble. I think it's good for your soul. if nothing else. So she starts working through her stuff. She starts to climb out of this depression. One day, she walks out of the therapist's office and she hits Perry up on the phone. She's texting, just giving her friend an update like you do with a friend who was worried. She's having an extremely positive day. This is a very good high for her. Things are getting much better. So, she gets off the phone with Perry. She's walking down the street, and all of a sudden she gets this massive headache. It's like this throbbing pain right behind her temple. And once again, her field of vision just does that red thing. It just washes over her, but it's different this time. There's been nothing that triggered it. She was in a good mood. There's no outside stimuli to be found. It doesn't go away as quickly as it did before. The red just kind of lingers. And as she looks through the people, walking past her on the sidewalk, she sees someone, something. And this thing is the only thing in the field of vision, the only thing in the panel that's not red. And it's a figure, and it's all black, but it's got a skull for a face, and it's smiling at her. And, this is... actually, if you live in, New York, this is probably a common occurrence, but for most of us, this would be very unsettling.
It'd be weird for sure with Arkansas.
So, I gotta say, from my end, I absolutely loved this book. I think Jeremy Haun is a great storyteller. I love what he does with female protagonists, which he writes quite often. I thought the art was great. I haven't, other than Regression, I'm not familiar with the artist on this, so I'm curious about how you guys felt about this.
Oh, it was well done, and the story was easy to follow. It was well written. Art was well done. Mm-hmm. Hell of a setup.
Yeah.
What the fuck is this? That's what I thought when I finished it.
If I hadn't read the synopsis through the entire book, I'd have been like, okay, well, this is a good, interesting crime story. Mm-hmm. There's obviously something attacked them, looked to be a monster, didn't really know. And then you get to the end and it's like, okay, well, we now know this is a monster story.
It's a very...
or at least a psychological monster.
I was going to say, it's a very psychological story. It reminded me a lot of what Jeff Lemire's doing with Gideon Falls. And I think with the imagery, especially with that black smiling face, that reminds me a lot of some of those images from Gideon Falls. I think it was a really good story element to have the very first page of the book do the all red, mm-hmm. To kind of put you in that place where you're like, okay, this is some type of supernatural or preternatural thing. Because I think if it hadn't had that page, it would 100% have been like, oh, this is a weird crime story, or maybe a werewolf story or something like that.
Yeah.
But I think that page kicking you off from the very beginning puts you in the mood of, oh, okay, this is kind of the wheelhouse that we're working in. This is a psychological thing. Obviously, everything being washed out in red does something tonally for the story. With the connotations that color has, I thought it was great storytelling.
Yeah, it's a really good book. I've enjoyed everything that Jeremy Haun's worked on that I've read, especially his creator-owned stuff. Mm-hmm. He's a great artist, a great storyteller, and the art in this book was good. The story, the pacing, all of it. I really have zero complaints about this book. I really enjoyed it.
The scene of her eye, being sewn shut.
Oh yeah,
that was gruesome, and I think that's one of the things that I think art does. You could have described that to me.
Yeah.
But the actual scene of seeing the scar on her face and the actual stitches in her eyelid, I remember it was that feeling you get when nails screech across a chalkboard or something. That's the feeling I got.
For sure, this is one of those instances where. For me, sometimes horror novels do a better job of scaring me than horror comics do. But this was one of those instances where the comic really illustrated the difference between a comic and a novel.
Yeah.
In being able to show you some of those things that you kind of visualize when you're reading, but how explaining somebody getting their eye socket sewn shut.
Yeah.
There's. It was very, very well done.
Yep.
And I don't know about for you guys, I love how many layers there are, because you can tell just a standard horror story, right? But I think what makes, what separates an average horror story or an average psychological story from something really great, which I think this book has the potential to be. Obviously, first issue, I'm just kind of hedging my bets here, but it's the context that the world is in. And so there's a lot of things hinted at here. As you said, you've got the idea of self-medication, of addiction, that is, in our world, in the real world, sweeping across the country. I mean, we have a major epidemic with painkillers. You've got the setup of something we didn't even really mention, was that she is a white woman who was dating a black man, and she was found brutalized in the park, and the cops don't believe her story. And there's some socio-political things that can play up in that, which isn't really touched on, but it's underlying.
It's hinted at.
Yeah, it's there. And so I think that,
because she talks about being offended that they didn't believe her story. That
yeah, and they're not looking. They don't seem to be taking it seriously and looking for him as a victim. They kind of see him as a
potential
subject.
Yeah.
And so like those are the things that I think make this book amazing. The sense of being, and I hate to use the word disfigured at the moment. I'm at a loss for what else I could say, though. Having, being a woman, we live in a very
well, it is disfigured.
Yeah.
I mean, it's the definition of disfigured. She looked one way, and now she looks a different way.
Well, I mean, but I don't want people thinking that just because you have a facial mark or something that's outside the average of what we consider beauty, that you're quote unquote disfigured. And so I digress. It's just I didn't know a way to say that. But we live in a very vain society. We live in a society that the first thing you look at is somebody's, like, we judge them. How we judge them as a person is a lot of how we see their aesthetics. And I think that's an underlying issue with this book, and especially because she doesn't start to feel comfortable in her own skin until she gets that prosthesis, and she's able to look herself and see herself in the mirror. And that's a very powerful moment, I think, for anyone. But those elements of these stories, which again don't play heavily into the plot, they're just subtext. But I think that is really what makes this an elevated story.
Well, that's what gives it a sense of realism. You can't go through what she went through and not have those things be a part of your story. And sometimes they're touched upon very lightly in a story, whether it's a movie, a novel, a comic book. Generally speaking, that stuff's lightly touched upon, if at all. And this book seems to be delving into all of those different aspects of what really happens when you survive an attack.
Yeah. So going beyond this, so I'm kind of curious, what do you guys think this is? I mean, because we really didn't get a good hint. Like, I'm sitting there wondering if is this a ghost story?
I think it's a psychological monster story.
Yeah. Do you have any kind of idea of what kind of monster it might be? I mean, because that's where I was trying to put this in the long run. Demonic,
something along that line.
Okay.
I really don't make it a habit of trying to guess where things are going. I'm just gonna see where it's going without making it. Yeah, I don't really try to do that. Make predictions on things. I just let the story develop. So it never occurred to me to try to figure out what the hell's going on. I was like, what the?
I fucked up Matt's whole world.
I mean, in fair, I mean, sometimes it's better just to let the story play out as to what it is. I think we build up expectations for what we expect something to be.
Yeah.
To me, that's where Oblivion Song fell apart. Is I never knew what it was trying to be. Mm-hmm. Not to jump on something else, but I had my expectations for what it was, and it wasn't close to that, and it kind of fell apart for me.
I have a bad habit of doing that, and it's one of those things that I talk about every once in a while, like possibly a type of like behavior I need to self-correct. I do, for better or worse, try to figure out a direction that the story's going in, partially because I think we've been trained by people like Jonathan Hickman to look for those little keyholes, look for those little clues that are going to be important later. So I think, but I need to quit doing that, because you're exactly right. It does establish an expectation in my mind of where the story could go, and then if it doesn't go where I want to, maybe I've got some disappointment. So how do, like, that's a question for me.
Said every Star Wars fan.
Right. How do you self-correct that behavior? It's kind of like being able to separate the art from the artist. There's some amazing stories out there that, honestly amazing, that I feel like I'm missing out on just because I know the artist or the writer's a shitbird in real life. But how do you separate that? I don't know.
I don't know either.
But I need to figure out how to do that, because I look for the path.
Well, I think there's certain stories that lead you into that, and there's certain stories that it's just, you just read it and you just enjoy it for what it is. And, I'm a little bit with Matt on this one. I'm just going to wait and see how it plays out. I mean, I'm not going to be disappointed if it's not a demon.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? It's going to be whatever it is.
Well, that was for me, with the when I saw where they were walking past, I immediately went, "Oh, that looks like a graveyard." And then you see the guy at the end of the story, and that's where I wonder if it's going to be a ghost story or a demon. Obviously, whatever it is,
Some sort of spiritual.
it's supernatural. Yeah. But I trust Jeremy Haun, and I know Jeremy Haun's wealth of creativity to the extent that I believe he's got a twist for us in there somewhere, and I can't wait to see what it is.
Did you guys read The Beauty?
I'm
the only one that read The Beauty.
I missed that boat. The biggest work of his that I've read is The Realm.
Yeah.
So, but you actually have a theory about how those two things could be connected, don't you? Was that you?
Yeah, I actually posted this on Jeremy's Facebook page one time that what if the realm is what happens after the beauty devastates the world? Because it's a plague that's it's a STD, basically. Well, not basically. It's an STD that people actually want because it turns them, no matter what you look like, you become a beautiful person after you have it. But then it kills you.
Okay.
So there's a group of people that are, obviously trying to fight it. There's a group of people that want it, so there's all this kind of back and forth going on. But it's ultimately a plague. And it's a plague that people want. So at the end of this, when people are all dead from the plague and the world's kind of reborn post-apocalypse, that could be the realm. And I posted kind of that theory on Jeremy's page, and he didn't say much, but he did like it. So it would be interesting to have that in there.
I would like to, at one time, if we can make it happen, actually sit down and have a conversation with Jeremy Haun about this, because there seems to be a through line. Like I said, having never read The Beauty and only read this single issue of this, but it seems to be something he's very interested in exploring is the vanity of culture, the vanity of aesthetics and what people are willing to do, and the sense of self we tie into what we see in the mirror.
Yeah.
I would love to hear him expound upon that at some point. And he may have already had in other interviews, and I've just missed it.
So the great thing is he's from Joplin, and he does a lot of local shows around us. So there's a very good chance we'll have that opportunity. And knowing Jeremy like I do, I feel like he would be willing to do an interview.
We should try to set that up. I feel like that would be fun to just get.
That'd be one of those that maybe we should look at sponsoring him coming on to a local show.
I'll take it on extra student loan.
Yeah.
Come on, Fannie Mae. Well, so I'm adding this to my pull list. I enjoyed it. I can't wait to see where it goes. What about you guys? Is this one going to stick with you?
It was on my pull list, and it's going to stay there.
Okay. Yeah, I'm going to give it a chance. I'm going to see where this is going. Along for the ride.
Do it.
Yeah. Good book, good story, good art. Worth the read, and definitely worth seeing where it goes.
I love it when we read something we all enjoy.
It's much better than when we all read something we
so
try and find stuff that
so
we
much
like
easier
out of
than
a book.
explaining to you guys why you're wrong. So much easier.
He's turning into me. Part of curmudgeon
is
already played.
Did you hear the underlying there? How difficult it is to prove us wrong, Craig?
Yes.
Did you hear what he said?
Yeah, part of curmudgeon's already taken part by me.
But you're my bestie, and you teach me how to. Like, this is, in the words of Marilyn Manson, I am your shit. You should be ashamed of what you've eaten. You did this, Craig.
For sure.
Matt, why don't you kick us off this week, man? Tell us a book that you read this week that you thoroughly enjoyed.
The one I'm going to talk about today is Marvel's X-Force number 3 by Benjamin Percy, Joshua Cassara, and Guru Effects. Benjamin Percy is killing it on X-Force.
Oh, yeah?
I'm digging what he is doing, man. This is great. I mean, Hickman passed the baton to him, and he has not missed a beat. In my opinion, he is nailing all these characters so well. The story is very interesting, and it just keeps getting more compelling. It's been a real surprise. I was very apprehensive, I'll just say, about Benjamin Percy's. I've read some of his stuff and liked it. Some of it I've really disliked, but
I'm not keen in on the name recognition there.
He's done some other Marvel work.
Has he? Yeah.
Yeah. The last thing I read from him, he did the Wolverine: The Long Night.
That was him. Okay.
And I really liked that, but
wasn't that a podcast that they had?
It was it was originally a podcast.
Oh, cool.
But then they, it was very successful, so they ended up turning it into a comic. I love the comic. I didn't like the podcast.
Okay.
But that's because of the tape, what I want out of a podcast.
Right.
Not, that's really about it. So to get into the issue, This issue continues where Wolverine and Kid Omega's mission of tracking down those who invaded Krakoa and assassinated Professor X. They found Domino in a lab, alive, but she's been mutilated on one side of her body. Turns out she has been used as a source of mutant tissue of which to graft onto humans. This will allow these humans the ability to use the Krakoa gates and attack the island. While this is happening, Beast and Jean Grey are working to reboot, that's my word, Professor X via his Cerebro backup. Also during this time, the one surviving soldier whom attacked Krakoa is being kept alive, but barely. The healer is working to save him so that he can be questioned regarding the attack. However, someone unidentified slips in and smothers him while he's in recovery. Yeah, that was a badass panel. I was like,
it was.
Shit.
I have a theory on who it was. But
yeah. I do too, and I have a feeling it's probably a little too predictable to actually be true.
Yeah.
So anyway, meanwhile, Magneto is preparing to address the world press to speak on the attack on Krakoa and the reported death of Professor X. While he's on his way to do so, Black Tom Cassidy is voicing his anger about the attack and that he feels like a failure for allowing it to happen. And he pushes Magneto to react to this attack before he does so in a very violent fashion. That was a really cool interchange.
Yeah.
And
Tom Cassidy telling Magneto that he better respond violently.
Yeah. You want to use your fancy words, is what Tom Cassidy said.
When Black Tom loses, like, he's written well, it is amazing.
He's like teeming with rage on how he wants to respond.
When Black Tom is written well, you can taste the scotch through the panel.
Oh,
like,
man.
you can just taste that bitter alcoholism coming out.
So anyway, after Xavier announces to the world press that the reports of his demise have been greatly exaggerated, he calls a secluded meeting with Magneto and a small group of mutants whom were involved in the Domino rescue mission. He says that too much to his disappointment, the need is obvious for a mutant shadow team to counter the Shadow Human Initiative that has made itself known. And the issue ends by showing the leader of the Human Shadow organization calling themselves Xeno, addressing his group. And he insinuates that someone on Krakoa is feeding him info and that he knows Professor X is preparing to pursue them. He states that now is the time to greatly accelerate their political and violent attacks on mutant kind. So the ending of this issue, man, is hella
Just
compelling.
game on.
Yeah, it's like, okay, here we go.
Yeah, so a cool thing that happened in that book that I really liked was Magneto took the broken Cerebro and formed it into a sword for Charles to use to protect himself in the future.
Cerebro sword.
Cerebro sword, yeah, that's what they called it. Yeah, it's great, man. It's really good.
So I'm not reading this series just because there's a lot.
You have to choose which X books you want.
There's a lot, but and I'm not. This is not a rain on anybody's parade. It sounds like an amazing series, but going back to the reason that they had Domino and they're harvesting bits from her to be able to get through the gates. Like you guys last week spoke on X-Men #3, and it was one of y'all's in your short stacks, and I read it this week, and now you've got this quadruplet of elderly women who are botanists who are using, and it's humans finding ways to get through their gates. Then we go to this other book and it's humans that are finding ways to get to why do we need 6 books with the same plot? Like, that's what I don't. So are these people that are harvesting bits and pieces out of Domino's, are they connected to these old ladies?
Well,
it's 2 different plans for what they're doing.
But I think the point is, to answer your question, I think that's the point, is humankind is finding ways to break down this utopia that the mutants have created for themselves.
Right.
Here it's happening. Some octogenarians have done it.
Yeah.
And then you've got this militant group that are doing it. So how is Krakoa and the individual personalities on it going to react to different threats from different directions for different reasons?
Yeah.
And I think it's a similar plot, but it's for different reasons. I forget what the horticultures.
Mm-hmm.
They are doing it because they feel like, humans should have the same technology that mutants have, basically it's a Weapon X a Black Ops group is doing it in X-Force so they can attack the mutants. So it's two different reasons. Both are trying to tear down the mutants from different reasons. So yes, I get your point that it's similar things going on. But did you hear about Domino having like half of her body removed?
Oh, no, I saw that one. Yeah, and my question that one was it dot side or not dot side?
It was not dot side, I believe. Thinking about it, it was her right side.
It's branding.
It was her right side.
Yeah. I can imagine.
They even took one of her eyeballs out. Kid Omega created like a psychic leg and arm for her, an eyeball for her to be able to get back to Krakoa before she could get healed. So that was pretty amazing.
Oh, I guess, yeah, now because they can't reboot mutants because they took X off the board, right?
No, they can because
are they able to reboot them now?
Jean Grey actually rebooted Charles. And I'm sorry I'm stepping in on your book here, but when Magneto's given his press conference, Charles steps through the portal and takes over. So
he's back. Good.
Yeah. So, and obviously Jean can do it too. So we have backups in case something happens to Charles.
All right. Well, that makes sense.
Yeah. So that gets rid of your whole killing people off for the sake of killing people off.
My thing was not me being.
See what we did there? We got rid of that, Caleb.
Well,
I like the way Craig.
And I think Jonathan Hickman got rid of that. I think that one of the things he was doing was bringing it up to dismiss it. But again, who do you need to prove that point to? Why do you need to prove that? Like you said in a fucking interview that you're over this whole thing, killing people for the sake of the.
Will you put
plot.
your sharp stick away, Craig, please?
It just
poke. So one of the great conversations, again, I'm just taking over Matt's book here, but one of the great conversations in this book is Jean Grey, and I forget who she's talking to, Beast, are talking about if death is taken off the table, then, they don't have this fear of dying anymore. And Beast is like, does it cheapen life? Because Beast is like, shouldn't we have a fear of death? And Jean's like, no, I think we're okay without it. So it's kind of this.
Well, there's a meta moment there. Does the death of characters cheapen books when you know that they can't come back? And I think that's the point. But again, who the fuck do you have to prove that point to at this point? It's like, who needs a lesson on that? I didn't need to spend $4 to learn that. I already knew that going in. I was excited because we were getting past that point.
I think it's a thing that's been proved. Well, because the one we didn't know about was Charles. If he died, what happened? Well, now we know that Charles can come back too. So.
Well, or what if Elixir dies and they can't make the little eggs anymore?
Well, they have backups. Yeah. They already stated they have backups of all of the 5.
You got them just in stasis somewhere.
Yeah.
So anyway, the issue was really good, and I highly recommend it.
Hijacked your.
It's a great setup for what looks to be some great violent interaction.
Oh, for sure. I mean, there was so much in it. That opening scene where Wolverine's standing in the gore of his kills.
Yeah, it talks about it's like mutants shall not harm humans. He goes, I guess that doesn't apply to these hamburgers.
That's an amazing scene. Yeah, that sentence alone is why you like this book.
Yeah. Oh, there's a lot of good Wolverine dialogue.
How are you liking Kid Omega in it?
I tell you, I'm really liking his interaction with Wolverine.
Yeah.
It's excellent.
That's always their best.
Snark fest.
Yeah. The issue number 2 was amazing interaction between him and Wolverine. I mean, that was just awesome.
Oh, when he says, well, I don't have my powers. I'm not much use. And Wolverine says, you have fist and teeth.
Yeah.
The work.
I like what he said, and teeth. I was like, oh my God, this is amazing.
I'm glad you love the book, man. I'm gonna at some point I'm gonna go back and try to read all of them. That's got to be a thing that happens.
I can give you about 3 that you can stay off of.
But we're keeping things positive here, right?
Yeah.
Oh, now?
Now we are. Yeah. Well.
Now that somebody else's turn.
Hey! I didn't go down that road. You can't be mad at me. I just asked a question. That's all. That's I prompted. I'm a prompter. It's what I do. I'm the best at what I do. I prompt. What'd you read this week, Craig? Tell us about it.
So I read Dying is Easy #1 by IDW, written by Joe Hill and art by Martin Simons.
Especially if you've got another body in a tube that you can be. Dying's real easy.
Well, this has, dual meaning because the main character in this book is an ex-cop that's become a stand-up comedian. And at some point, somebody asks him, what's harder, being a homicide detective or being a comedian? And he says, dying is easy, comedy's hard.
Oh, shit.
So, he's a very average comedian in his new job, his new life. And his jokes are, fall flat with the crowd. But he has this one skit that he does about the bouncers at clubs and how, top of the gig is this. And the very bottom bouncing gig you want is being at a comic store or at a comic club. And it's the only kind of jokes he really gets some laughs out of. And he's leaving and coming off stage, and the next comedian coming on stage starts giving him a hard time. And guy's name is Carl Dixon, and he's just giving him shit as he's walking off the stage, saying, well, don't worry about it, this isn't your crowd. And Sid Holmes, who's the main character, says, well, who would be my crowd? And he said, I don't know, maybe morticians or,
Damn.
But because he talks a lot about being an ex-cop and homicide during his comedy routine, and that's why it's not really going over real well.
Right.
So while Dixon's performing, Sid sits down and starts talking to some other comedians, and they say, hey, you used to be a cop, some hitmen, how much would it cost to take this guy out? He's like, well, I know some Puerto Ricans would probably do it for $40, but why do we want him killed? And he goes, well, he's stealing all of our material.
Oh, one of those guys.
Yeah, and so
Matt is losing it for anybody.
I know some Puerto Ricans that could do it for $40.
Well, so then he goes, well, I'll tell you what, I can knock his teeth out for $113.
That's oddly specific.
And that's what the guy says. Well, that's a weird number. And he says, why 113? He goes, well, because wings in this crap hole are $13 a plate, and I want some wings, and I need to buy this bracelet I found for $49.99, but my daughters are twins, so I have to get two of them. So that's where he got the $113. So he steps outside and has a smoke, and he's confronted by this woman who blames him for her sister's death. Apparently the last case he worked on was a child death where the mom beat the kid to death, but he couldn't pin it on her. They had facts, but they didn't have hard evidence proof to take it to trial. So he started harassing this woman, and she stepped out in front of a truck to kill herself because he was harassing her so much. So the sister is there giving him a hard time about it and yelling at him and saying, well, how can you make jokes, and what's funny after you cause my sister to kill herself? And he says, well, the last thing that went through your sister's mind was the hood ornament on the truck she stepped in front of. And of course, then the sister goes crazy and starts hitting him and knocks him down. He's not putting up any sort of fight or whatever. And the husband drags her away, and he gets picked up by this ex-cop friend of his off the ground. And she's, oh, is that your fan club? He says, yeah, I thought I was a comedian. So they have a little conversation. He goes back inside. And after a minute, he's looking around, and Dixon's finished his routine. So he follows him outside and proceeds to beat the holy hell out of this guy. I mean, just beats it, because he found out from the other guys, this guy's on Leno now. He's got a gig coming up on Leno, and the guy has stolen his bouncer routine to use on Leno. He actually used that in his audition to be on Leno. And so he beats the holy hell out of this guy, and he comes back in, and he walks by the other comedians, and he says, y'all owe me $113, but you can pay me later. I got to go wash the Carl off of me. Because he's kind of covered in blood. And so goes to the next morning, and he gets an early morning phone call from the ex-cop that had helped pick him up off the street when the other lady had attacked him. And she says, hey, I'm just letting you know that the uniform officers are on their way to arrest you. And he's like, I just beat him up, And she goes, they're not arresting you for assault and battery. They're arresting you for murder. Carl Dixon's dead. And that's how it ends.
Yeah.
So, pretty good story. It's kind of a standard issue crime story. You kind of get, oh, this is where it's going, and then it ends with a cliffhanger at the first issue to get you kind of hooked into it. So it's well written, don't get me wrong, and the jokes aren't really funny, but number one, Joe Hill's not a comedian. Number two, I don't think they're intended to be funny.
I was going to say, it sounds like they're meant to be dry, and it's meant to be that awkward moment.
Yeah. They're not really intended to be funny, but they're really not.
Yeah.
So it's well paced. It's a lot of fun. There's a lot of stuff happening, but it's ultimately a standard issue number one issue crime story.
Yeah, and this is part of his Hill House.
This is an
different?
IDW. So this is something different. This is his own thing going on. And so the art in it, Simmons' art it's very stylized, but it works. Did either of you read The Bunker?
No.
Where it's kind of that very like loose lines with a lot of detail, but it's got like some dark watercolor to it.
I'd have to.
Anyways, that's what this is, and it's not my favorite style of art, but for this book, it really works, and I thought it was well done for this story. Because even though it's got these like loose lines, it still has a lot of detail in it. The cop's t-shirt or a shirt is like a Hawaiian shirt with all this bright stuff going on it, which it was I thought at first it was lights reflecting when he was on stage, but no, it's just the crappy shirt he was wearing, but it's pretty well done. So I'm going to stay on it. I'm interested to see where it goes. Matt, you may like this one with it being a violent crime drama.
Yeah, I read the synopsis on this. I almost picked it up, and yeah.
You've got Carl on you.
And I sent you guys a text with the panel where he's telling the joke, and I'm like, I really wasn't sold on this until he tells the lady that the hood ornament was the last thing on her sister's bond.
I was like, what the hell are you reading?
And then, of course, when he says he'll be back in a minute, he's got to go wash the Carl off of him.
Yeah,
that was pretty great. So, pretty good. Piece of advice to up-and-coming comedians: don't steal jokes from other comedians.
No.
Yeah.
Especially if one of them's an ex-cop.
Someone out there's got $113 and is hungry.
Yeah.
I love that.
Got Puerto Ricans that I know a couple of Puerto Ricans that'll do it for 40, 20 if they're hungry.
That's hilarious.
Yeah, there's some great moments in the story, but yeah, it like I said, it didn't take me long to read the synopsis because it's pretty straightforward.
Yeah.
It's, but it again, sometimes straightforward's good.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Sometimes it doesn't have to have all this deep stuff going on, especially if you're just trying to get to the crime that's setting up the plot. So,
and a lot of times for crime books, that's honestly, I don't mind it when they're so tropey because they do lead you. Like sometimes you just want a glass of water. Sometimes you want that familiarity from a story, and I don't need it to be something deep seated and in depth.
It's Joe Hill, so I don't expect that it's going to be a straightforward crime.
Yeah,
I expect there's going to be something to it. But in the first issue, if that's where he's directing us, that it's a crime story, then that's, he did a good job of that. But it's probably misleading.
What I appreciate about a good crime story is the motivations of the characters.
Right.
Yeah. That's, because criminals have very unique motivations, much different from the average citizen. Mm-hmm. So reading stories about those people's lives, it's really, really interesting to me. That's why I read a lot of crime stories, and I've read a lot of true crime for that reason. It's just a different way of living that is hard to wrap your mind around.
Well, and there's always this weird, trying to, as a person who's not that type of person, trying to figure out how they've justified this. Yeah. Or how it was naturally justified.
Or if they don't justify it.
Well, that's even new. That's a scary thought.
Yeah.
I don't want to go to the dark place.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's a good book. If you like Joe Hill, you're going to like this book because, it's a well-written Joe Hill book. So
he's crushing it right now. He's having a good year. He's having a real good year.
Joe Hill is the better of the King writers.
Hot. Oh, okay.
I mean, I don't think that's really hot. I mean, I think Joe Hill's a better writer than his father.
You think so?
Yeah, I don't think that's necessarily a hot take. I think...
I stopped myself from saying it. I almost went there and I was like, no, he's right.
It's still it's going to be a hot take for a lot of people.
Yeah. There's a lot of people that probably won't agree with that. For me, I don't think... I mean, maybe it is a hot take, hell, I don't know. But to me, he knows how to finish a story. He can do some things that his dad can't do. That doesn't necessarily mean his dad's a bad writer. I enjoy Stephen King.
No, for sure.
Yeah.
How can you not?
Yeah.
Nice. stanza, Matt. Shut up, Matt. All right, so
praise God, let's eat. That's the best ending line out of any story ever.
Space turtles.
Well, there is that too.
I took a chance this week. It was a leap of faith, if you will. It's a leap of faith that others did not make, and I understand why. Because you've been hurt before, you've been burned, and you're afraid to go back to that place. So I read a book this week. It came out, and I've been excited about the art, but I was not excited about the story. I just wanted to see the art, and it turns out it paid off for me. And that book is none other than The Dark Knight Returns. And this Dark Knight Returns: The Golden Child. This was written by Frank Miller of Frank Miller fame, and it was drawn by Raphael Grandpa, which is why I really got pulled in there. And a lot of people don't know who Raphael is, but if you're in the art world, if you're into like just comic art as high end art, you know who Raphael Grandpa is. So it was really exciting to see him work on something like this. Colored by Jordi Belair, who is one of the best colors in the industry. She's winning Eisners and just being awesome. With letters by John Workman and Darren Bennett. Now, I want to flat out say this before we get started. I think, for me personally, this was the best Frank Miller book I've read in a decade. New Frank Miller.
There was a Frank Miller that wrote a Superman story recently.
We don't talk about the Dark Times.
I guess that's a common name. I mean, there's a lot of Frank Millers in the world, I suppose.
And not the same guy. Maybe the same body. I don't know. I mean, I'm not making excuses for the man. That book was hot garbage. Superman Year 1 through 16 was terrible. This seems like a different person that's writing that book. It's a very, very lucid. As I was listening to the EOC guys talk about it, and I think that's one of the ways that they put it is it seems like he's came out of a fog. Which, by the way, as a podcaster, it's weird deciding to talk about a book, writing something, and then hearing another podcaster talk about it and have similar views. It's weird. And I sometimes feel like I'm cribbing from those guys, and I think maybe I do a little bit, and if so, I apologize for that, but my thoughts are my own. I just maybe they line up with other people. I promise. So
I like how he just plainly says that. My thoughts are my own.
So if you like this book, I will say that your thoughts are definitely your own.
Hateful. You're hateful. All right. So let me tell you about this book a little bit, because I know Matt, you have not read it yet, correct? And Craig is just wrong. So when I was a kid. And I was hanging around grown folks, right? I'd always know when something was being said that I wasn't supposed to hear as a child, because my dad he'd kind of interrupt who was ever talking, and he would say, hey, little ears, like don't be saying bad words or don't be talking about stuff you don't need to hear about. And 9 out of 10 times I had no idea what was being said. But that was his way of kind of guarding me or shepherding how I learned about the world around me. Because that's how kids learn, right? That's the way that they absorb things. They observe other people. And the reason I'm bringing this up is because I think an understanding of how children learn from the adults around them through observance it's a great way to approach the book, because inevitably this book, it is about the lessons that children learn. And specifically the children that I'm speaking of are the heroes in Frank Miller's Dark Knight world. This book doesn't open per se where you would expect it to. It doesn't open with Carrie. It doesn't open with any of her Robins, but instead it opens up with a whole other set of kids, Superman's kids. And you start off, you're in this apartment, and Laura, who you'll remember Laura, she's the blue-haired daughter of Superman and Wonder Woman, and somebody that we haven't seen in the Dark Knight world before, Jonathan Kent, Superboy, as a toddler. And John, he's learning from the things around him, but he's, as you might imagine, not your average toddler. He's very astute at a young age, and he's kind of picking up stuff from his dad, which is great. That's who you want him to pick up stuff from, is the ultimate Boy Scout, the person who sacrifices everything for humanity, the torchbearer for what we consider heroes. But he's also picking up stuff from Laura. And after the events of Dark Knight 3, The Master Race, this takes place about 3 years after that. Laura's become very jaded about humanity. The superheroes, she really doesn't understand why that they're having this inherent drive to protect them. And I mean, on some level, I can see where the events that she's been through have led her that, because I mean, as humans, we're pretty damn fragile. And if we're honest about truth of the matter things, a lot of times we're our own worst enemy. As a species, we're largely responsible for like 100% of our own problems at this point. So it's easy to see how somebody with that level of power, that level of responsibility, and no small amount of something akin to, call it privilege, they might feel some kind of way about mankind as a class or even a species. And as Laura and John are flying around, and Laura's kind of pointing out all the just readily abundant evidence of the human shortcomings in our society, there's literally socio-political protests that are unraveling at their feet. I mean, they're driving through the air, and she's like pointing to John at hospitals, like, see, they're broken. They do this to each other. They harm each other, and then they just fly over this protest, and she's like, they can't even get along about this shit. Like, look at them. Look at what's happening underneath us. And the protesters that they've taken to the streets, and what they're railing against is the re-election of, I'm going to use air quotes here, but this governor, who, by the way, bears a resemblance to a certain prominent impeachable American president. Now, I don't want to say any names, but his initials are Donald Trump. And these protesters have been met with pro-governor counter-protesters who are led by the members of the Joker gang. And so, like, people who have thrown on these Joker masks and this Joker makeup, and they're inciting violence. They're, carrying flags that might be socially inappropriate, and they're going in there, they're trying to pick a fight, and they're trying to create social unrest. And, well, the Joker gang, they start to attack the protesters, and, I mean, they're winning. I mean, flat, dude, these protesters are getting their asses kicked, just all over the place. And fortunately for the protesters, somebody has got their back. And that's where this starts to make sense in being under the Dark Knight mantle, because that somebody is Carrie Kelly. And she just swoops in with awesomeness and gusto. And Carrie's actually Batwoman now. She's got the gold and black visage that you would associate with Batgirl, but she goes by Batwoman. And she's the leader of her own little gang that you might remember from other books like DK3 or DK2. These kind of bat brawlers. Think of like Antifa, but with a wardrobe comprising mostly of like Warner Brothers trademarked outfits. So Carrie and her crew, they kind of curb the attack and scatter the Jokers. But as John Kent is watching all this, he's seeing and he's hearing things. For John and for Carrie and the rest of them as well, something is not passing the smell test here. Something's not adding up. Why is the Joker gang, they're acting as enforcers for the governor? Because this doesn't make sense, right? Like the Joker's not a political entity. He's not somebody that takes sides. He breeds chaos. So why would his followers be inciting violence and stuff, and specifically seeming to turn political sway into a political figure that's already in power? It just doesn't make a lot of sense. And so they kind of get together after they bounce back to the Bat Bunker, which, by the way, there's an actual Bat Bunker. They've moved out of the cave. Now they're in this giant, like, old factory in the woods. It's great. It's awesome. It's covered with moss. Beautifully, beautifully rendered. And they're kind of sitting down to figure out what's happening, and they settle on the fact that this entire thing, all of this, it just reeks of Darkseid's influence. Everything about this, the behind the scenes, the Machiavellian nature of everything, like this, it just seems like Darkseid pulling the strings. And they're not wrong. Darkseid is running re-election influence for this governor. There is a coordinated effort to undermine the democratic system in Gotham, in whatever state Gotham's in New York. And like there's this digital information campaign. I mean, they're drowning in chaos. And you're wondering how these two things might connect. Well, long story short, the Joker has teamed up with Darkseid, which is horrifying for everybody involved. And it's no bueno. Darkseid and Joker, they're undermining the election system. And the carrying the Bat Gang, they're not having it. But why does Laura need to care? I mean, we've already established it's pretty much over humans at this point. She's got this massive amount of power. She's above them. They're causing their own problems. But, alas, he's Darkseid, and she's the daughter of Superman and Wonder Woman, so it doesn't take much. It's just a few harsh, kind of stark words from Carrie. It's all it takes to get her and by proxy John on board to kind of team up with the Bat Gang and to go after the Joker and after Darkseid. So they do. They track down, because I mean you can't, no matter what she thinks about the humans, you can't let Darkseid win. It's almost a matter of personal pride to her. So John and Laura track down the Joker, and they find him. He's hanging out with Darkseid himself. Now, they're able to dispatch the Joker and little Clown Prince and all of his minions fairly easily. I mean, they're Kryptonians, and the Joker's just kind of a fucking clown. So Darkseid is... Darkseid is. That's the only sentence you need to know. Darkseid is. He ain't a punk. He's not about it. He is not down with having his time wasted on bullshit. And the static he's getting from this couple of kids is kind of insulting, to be real honest. So he just leans into it. He goes after him. He launches his attack. And he throws this Omega beam at Laura. And when he does that, of course, it causes a great amount of chaos. Everybody's paying attention to Darkseid, and the Joker just kind of slips away into the shadows. But do you guys know what an Omega beam is? Do you know what that does? Because I'm not a New Gods person. I've not read a lot of the New God stuff other than one or two Superman stories. I'm not really necessarily familiar with Darkseid. So I knew he had this Omega beam power. I didn't necessarily know what it did, though.
I mean, it obliterates people and things.
Yeah, like not only, it doesn't just kill you. Like it doesn't just
it's like
explode
Thanos'
you.
snap,
but
it's to a person.
It erases you. And I personally didn't walk in with that knowledge to this book. Again, not being a DC stan, I know who Darkseid is, but I don't have a lot of that baggage that comes with me. So what this does is, like, it erases your memory, the memory of you. It just completely ends any existence that you ever were. And so if this hits Laura, I mean, it's just like, who's Laura? What's a Laura? Who knows what a Laura is? Nobody does. So she kind of launches into evasive maneuvers to avoid getting Thanos snapped by this beam. Yeah, the smart move. But as she's doing that, like, she's like zigzagging through the air and going, and while this is happening, Darkseid's just talking a lot of shit. Like, Darkseid's like, he's just waiting. He's waiting to see what happens. He's monologuing like a motherfucker. So he just, as he's sitting there, by the way. Yeah, very much so. As he's doing that, this kind of gives John time to sneak around him. Like I said, John is pretty damn powerful. We know this by being Superman's son. This whole time, John is just kind of floating there in the air. But we don't know what John can do in this world. But John sneaks around him, and he just blasts Darkseid with like his little baby boy blue laser eyes. Just hits him, and like apparently John's been soaking up the sun or something, because this is no small feat. I mean, this is like Darkseid feels this. This is not swatting mosquito. He puts the hammer on him. And you can imagine how this might piss Darkseid off. So he starts going after John. But wait, you remember how Laura was flying around zigzagging, getting chased by the molecular equivalent of Erasure? She flies headlong at Darkseid when he's distracted. And at the very last moment, just kind of bloop, hard left turn. And Darkseid is hit full on in the face with his own Omega beam. And it's the equivalent of a nuclear blast. I mean, you just see just the shockwave go through everybody. He's gone. And at the end of it, Laura and John find themselves standing in a crater, and they're looking at Darkseid's empty helmet. And, they're scratching their little noggins, wondering where the body is. Or, is this real? What happened? Is it over? Do we get to go home now? What's going on? Carrie jumps down, and she joins them. But, she also doesn't trust that the battle's over. She's a little bit of a Reagan kind of gal. She needs to trust but verify. She wants to see a body, which of course there isn't one. So at this point, I need Matt to go ahead and like cue up Slayer, because what happens is like it starts to rain fucking blood from the sky in Gotham, and they were right. It was too easy. You can't kill Darkseid. He's not a being. He's a cosmic act of vengeance given body. So while they're sitting there just getting soaked in the red rain, he's reborn in the cosmos. I mean, he is revenge. He is hate. And he's not going to stand for this kind of embarrassment. The toddlers will not besmirch the good name of Darkseid. So, what he will...
Issue ends with Darkseid going, no, you didn't.
What he will have out of all this, what he will have is Jonathan Kent. Like, he is impressed by this little kid's actions, his bravado, his strength, his power. How he's his own force. He sees a kindred power in the boy, a successor, if you will. And Darkseid's all about adopting kids. Just that's kind of his thing. He sees someone he can mold into being his right hand. And although he was slighted by the boy, he intends to come back to Earth, and he's going to break John's will. And by doing so, he's going to break the planet. And he kind of does. He rockets back through the universe, and he brings just pure destruction with him. I mean, it's a force of nature. He causes monsoons, there's tidal waves, earthquakes, a couple of volcanoes, a hurricane flies through like Kansas. He just turns the planet against life itself. And while all this kind of global and natural destruction is happening, Carrie and her Bat crew are kind of doing what they can at their power level. She's trying to unfuck the electoral snafu that has landed the governorship in the hands of this, kind of corrupt criminal stooge. And the Joker slipped out when they were fighting, so she tracks down the Joker. And the Joker's driving around in this little green throwback to the cover of Action Comics #1, which I thought was amazing. And it's that kind of car. And she proceeds, and this is the part, if you don't read anything else, you need to read this, Matt, because you will love it. She proceeds to systematically dismantle them. It will, in a way that will make every fan of the classic Batman giddy. She's channeling pure Bruce, man. And she's going, like, the bat is exuding from her. She's looking at every move. She's tracking every angle. She's using the environment as a weapon. She's using the Joker's own psychology against them. At one point, she gets him to play chicken with another car, which, by the way, she wins, and causes the Joker to wreck. And they run into this arcade, which is very much her world. It's like this old classic arcade. And she shuts off the lights. I mean, she just goes full in. It's awesome. Like, I don't know how else to. And Grandpa's depiction of this. I mean, she just goes full Mortal Kombat and just beats the shit out of them in this arcade. All the while, she's catching it on camera. It's like she's getting the Joker, the things he's saying. She's got the Joker's phone. She's taking screenshots of his screen. And so as she's just beating the shit out of these bastards, she's doxing the connection between the Joker and the governor to the mass media. She's showing the world the truth. She's giving them a chance to see the game that's been played on them, she's putting a spotlight on the fraud that's been perpetuated against their democracy. And I don't know about you guys, but hell, for me, the thought of a society that's willing to see objective truth when it's splayed out before them is probably the most fictional thing in this book. So, and this is where I'm saying Frank Miller's fucking got it again. The game is over for the Joker and the governor in this fictional world, but not for Darkseid. Darkseid is the game. He comes back and he's raining holy hell down on Gotham and Laura and John. And, for some people, you think when this happens, Laura's natural instinct is to buck up and go after him again. But for some people who have natural inclinations of thought to lean a certain way, places of privilege, who don't see how things work out, words are always going to be more of a threat than sheer physical force. Let's not forget that the biggest weapon in Darkseid's arsenal is the anti-life equation. That's it. That's the game over. And he uses it. He uses that to crack the weaker minds around him. Folks like Laura and Carrie, who were there back at the scene, he just kind of mind wipes them. And they're just these shells of humans. And he uses that, the threat of death of family and friends, to kind of use it as collateral against John, who's standing there and he's floating there and he knows that he's the one that Darkseid wants, and he's the key to ending all of this. And you got to think about what this kid has already had to deal with. I mean, he's a young kid. His planet's a wreck. His sister's floating around unconscious. The very embodiment of cosmic destruction standing in front of him, demanding his subjugation for the ransom of everything he knows. And it would be very easily and understandable for John just to bend the knee, man, just to break. But he doesn't. I mean, that's not who he is. Humans matter to John. He's picked that up from his dad. Humanity matters. And these tiny creatures, these creatures who by all accounts are beneath him, they're beneath his sister, they're beneath his dad, they're beneath Wonder Woman, they're beneath Thanos. Life still matters. And so in a most eloquent way, he just kind of tells Darkseid to go fuck himself, which is great. It's fantastic. Now, Darkseid, the proud creature of habit that he is, he just goes and Omega beams it again. So he launches this beam at John, and John absorbs it. Like, that's what we're dealing with here. He absorbs a fucking Omega beam. And how cool is that? Just that concept in and of itself. I mean, for like the comic nerd kid in me just got giddy at this point. And when this happens, he totally turns it back on him. He shoves the Omega beam back at him. He hits him with power. Now, it doesn't do what it did to Darkseid the first time. Like, Darkseid's not getting hit with a pure Omega beam, and Darkseid came back stronger, better, and faster. It's it's not like pure great Omega Beam. It's been stepped on a little bit. So but he feels it again. So he's weakened, and he charges at John, and he catches John, and he's clutching John in his fist. And this, it's this little kid in the fist of Darkseid, squeezing the life out of him. But all of a sudden, just kind of, there's this bright flash, this pop, and John's gone. John's not there. He's not holding John anymore. But Darkseid can hear John. He can hear John, like John's been narrating through the story a little bit, but all of a sudden John he's in Darkseid's head, and he's just letting Darkseid know all the ways he's going to fail, all the ways humanity's not going to get crushed underneath him, and that he's not going to end life as he knows it. And this is getting to Darkseid, like the idea that humanity might be more than Darkseid can ever conquer, that the human spirit is beyond his power. It's frustrating to Darkseid, and because he can't get a hold of John anymore, but he's still got Laura who's floating there, so he just fuck it, I'm going to shoot Laura and get this voice out of my head. But the Omega Beam kind of just goes through Laura. It's a very Kitty Pryde-esque moment where it doesn't hit her. It just phases right through her, and as it does that, parts of Laura are starting to like fade out. She's starting to like erode from existence. And you can hear John saying, "Don't worry, sis, I've got you." And so what you're left with is, at this moment, Darkseid is just broken and alone in the middle of this crater, and Darkseid's bleeding. John's taken the power off the board. I mean, his own power, the power of Darkseid. It's this idea that, Superman showed up in, like, the Superman syndrome. When Superman showed up, all of these entities, all this power came in the world, and if you take Superman or Superman-esque figures off the board, then you're just left with people on an even playing field. That's what Frank took off the board in this. There's no more Kryptonians. There's no more Amazonians. No more Omega power. Just Darkseid in a mortal form, surrounded by Cassie and the Bat Gang, and what may or may not be Greta Thunberg. I'm still not convinced about this. And they just end him. They just go at him. Like these people, these everyday average people. They end this power. And that's the end of the book. Now, this is a one-shot. I was hoping this was going to be a series, and it blows my mind. It baffles me. It insults my conscience that the super book that shall not be named got 2 or 3 issues or whatever it was, and this book got 1. Grandpa's art is stunning. I would spend fortunes on this art. If you are familiar with Ian Bertram's work in Little Bird, it's very much in that wheelhouse. It has got this motive feel, like every page. It's almost like Trad Moore. When you see Trad Moore work, the page seems to move. It seems to bend. There are no sharp angles. There's this textual detail, but it's not the anime style. Imagine Trad Moore with Ian Bertram's heavy lines. Not heavy lines, but just highly detailed lines. The little marks everywhere. The high amount of texture. It's that. Like when John shoots that Omega Beam back at him, you see the page warp. It's phenomenal. And again, like we were talking about in the earlier story, taking these things that happen. I mean, this is not hiding the ball, right? Frank Miller's not trying to pretend like this book is not what it's not supposed to be. Like it's alluding to Donald Trump. It's alluding to the Russians. It's alluding to this idea that democracy in action is a real thing and people need to rise up. It's firmly going there. And if you don't like stories that are going to be heavy political, this might not be for you. But it's also with the character of Superman's daughter, with Laura. It's playing both sides. Laura is very much the apathetic political leftist who just sees the world needing to bleed. Like the humans are going to cause their own problems, and she's just okay with them, people who are suffering, wiping themselves off the map for the good of their own kind. Like, it's this far right and far left thing meeting in the middle that Frank is doing, and that to me is brilliant work. And that was what Frank always did best, with no small mix of brutality. I think the work that this did in showing the political movement being attached to the Joker, it reminded me a lot of what happened with the Joker film. But I think Frank did it better here, whereas he didn't turn around and say, yeah, people who base political movements are no better than insane clown, like than the people they lead or that lead them, the people they look after are just clowns. This didn't do that. This took it in a different direction and gave it some respect. And so, again, I'm speaking from a person who, I've got my own political philosophies and beliefs, and that was kind of what I didn't enjoy about the film. And I think Frank Miller did it better here. Hands down, like this, if you read Superman Year One, like a lot of us did, and you didn't like it, you need to read this story because Frank still got some Frank in there. And as far as a single issue goes, this might be my favorite single issue that I've read all year. Like if I had to pick like one snapshot, obviously not my favorite out of everything, but if just judging a single issue by its own thing, when you compare the art, when you compare the textualization of the story, when you compare how the depth that he goes to, and the legend that is Frank Miller, and a lot of it is just me being happy that I think Frank has redeemed himself.
Yeah,
solidly one of my favorite issues of this year. Nice. I will probably never be able to afford a piece of Grandpa art out of this book, but I would love to have one. Like this book will make you say, what was Dark Knight 3? It's amazing. And nice. I realize that Frank didn't, like Dark Knight 3 wasn't all Frank. But I'm going to let you borrow that because I think you will enjoy it, man. I know Craig, it wasn't up for Craig. It wasn't what Craig didn't love it like I did. And that's fine. That's fair. So
yeah, I'm just going to let it be I'm not going to rain on your parade.
You can red rain on it like it did in the book if you want to. I thought it was great. I think this is.
I will say that your synopsis makes me want to relook at it because maybe I missed some things or maybe I just wasn't in the right mindset. But I had some issues reading it, but that's not necessarily.
I don't think it's necessarily you might have missed anything. You also have to look at. I think that art in general, whether it be just a simple comic or something that does supposed to have depth, readers bring their own baggage to it. So in the conversations we have outside of comics and stuff in the real world, Craig and Matt you both know where I stand politically and where I stand on things that are going on in our modern world or postmodern world, might as well call it post-fact world, definitely. And so I bring that to the readership. Like I bring that to what I read in my stories. So it's very easy for me to put that into the narrative. And I could be wrong. And I would love to hear your take on it because you don't bring some of the same things I do. You bring it a different angle and different scope to it.
Yeah, so the political aspect of the book is kind of where I was like, meh, and it's not, I don't care that the political part is in there or that it's a backdrop to the story. Mm-hmm. I don't ever see that Joker or Darkseid give a shit about American politics.
Right.
I just don't. I mean, that's not who they are. And so for me, it was way out of character for the two of them. Okay. It was hard for me to overcome that. And I think once I saw what was going on, I kind of checked out of the story.
Yeah.
And it was just because I didn't buy that motivation from those two characters.
Okay.
And that's really all it came down to. So, again, I don't care that that's part of the story. Politics are part of comics, and they always have been, and they always will be.
I can totally see that. It does seem to be a strange leap to have Darkseid, interfering in a governor's electoral campaign.
That
That does seem pretty pedestrian for Darkseid.
Well, where I went with it, and the way I justified it again, maybe it's some self-justification, is for the Joker. The Joker just cares about causing chaos. Like he loves people to live the lie, and so he's created the stooge in the governor that's doing these things and making people work against their own will. Like that to me, that does seem like something the Joker would do to kind of throw a monkey wrench into modern society for the hope and the sake of chaos, that chaos will reign. Like he just likes to break the system, and I can see that for Darkseid, 100%. I can see like why would he be playing into the political system? The only justification I have for that is that if this particular political slant wins, then things like death by poverty is going to increase. I think the image of Greta Thunberg, like I said, I think it's actually her at the end of the page. If he can't rain down and make the planet turn against life itself, he can prop up a position that's going to like promulgate global warming and stuff like that. That's going to take a longer time to end the planet than what he could do. But and that's again a self-justification of that. But that's where I see why he's involved in trying to bring in the apocalypse.
So again, art is subjective to the people reading it, and if you can make that leap and it works for you, good. I mean, it was just a book that wasn't for me, and that's okay. I mean, I've read Frank Miller stories in the past 10 years that I like better.
Yeah.
And that's okay. It is.
No, for sure.
I didn't hate the book. There was times in it that I was like, come on, let's get the narrative going. But I didn't hate the book. I didn't, it just wasn't there for me. And that's okay. It's not every book's meant for every person.
I will say I picked up a lot more on the second and third reads than I did the first one.
And like I said, I may have just not been in the right mind frame to read it. and sometimes that happens, and I'm well aware of that.
Yeah.
You know, so
Well, I mean,
it may be worth going back for a second read on it.
think about how much you read in general is you
Well,
got to be in a mindset.
Well, very often that happens to me, whether it's a movie or, you know, I remember hating Men in Black the first
Yeah.
time I watched it, and I went back later, and it's, you know, it's a great, not a great movie. It's a very good
fun.
movie. Yeah, it's a fun movie. But I absolutely hated it the first time I watched it.
Why is that? Why did you hate it?
I don't know. I really don't. Because upon second viewing, I liked it a lot more. So it was, I can't even remember the reasons for it, but sometimes you're just in the wrong mindset for something.
Oh,
and that may have very well been my situation with this one. And when I got there and I was like, I don't buy Dark Side giving a crap about American politics. I don't, it's not, and that was just me. And again, you know, we talked about baggage. I have a perspective of what I think a character would care about.
Right.
And when that character is doing something that I don't think they would give a shit about, it kind of turns me off. And that's what happened there. So
yeah, and I can apply that to other things that I, you know, when I see other characters engaging in activities, I'm just like, I don't give a shit about that.
Yeah, exactly. And it happens, and different writers and different artists will sometimes bring different perspectives to a character that's been around for a while, and that's okay. But sometimes it's such a leap that my mind can't grasp it.
Yeah.
So that's all. That was really where it turned me off.
Yeah.
And once I got turned off on it, it was hard to stay connected to it.
Yeah.
You know,
I can
the
see
Joker talking about selling, I mean, we can call them whatever we want, but they were Donald Trump dolls. I mean, it was drawn as Donald Trump.
Right.
It was Trump. Which again, I could give a fuck about. You know, that's not what. But Joker selling Donald Trump dolls. You know that it was okay. I mean, it was just weird, but that's okay. Comics are supposed to be weird sometimes. They are. So,
and I love that I love that you and I can read the same thing and have two different understandings, or not even understandings, two different opinions on the same thing. That's what makes art awesome.
Any art, you know, we can look at a painting. The three of us could look at a painting and get three different perspectives on that painting, and it could just be a woman sitting there staring back at you like the Mona Lisa.
I mean, there are people out there walking amongst us that do not like Mad Max Fury Road.
None of those people are wrong.
I've met them.
They're not. They don't exist. Dude, there are people, and I learned this the other day. There are people who think that that Groundhog Day is a Christmas movie. There are humans that think Groundhog Day. Like, I just blew my mind. It was on a best of list. I was like, huh?
But I mean, it's literally in the name.
Yeah, no. Jason Wood pointed my attention to it. He's like, dude, this like, are you fucking kidding me? And I'm like, no, this cannot be true. Anyway, can we agree that Raphael Grandpa's art was just fucking insane and bonkers and beautiful?
Yes, I think the art was great.
Hold my hand.
Did not
hold my hand while you say it. Hold my hand.
But I'm getting to the part you're not gonna like.
Don't touch me.
I didn't like the character designs, the costume designs.
Oh, get out.
I just didn't, but that's okay. I mean, again, I understand what he was doing, which was borrowing from this world that Frank Miller had created and following along those same lines. But I've never cared for the character designs, the costume designs in the Frank Miller Dark Knight universe anyways.
Oh, I love his Batgirl or Batwoman character design in this. It just makes me happy.
Okay. We're good.
All right. Well, okay. All right, moving on. Let's.
The art was fantastic. Me not caring for some of the designs doesn't change that. I mean, it was still great art.
Lessening my opinion of you. I'm joking, of course.
It's all good. We're allowed to have differing views.
We are. Let's have differing views about what's going to come out on Wednesday. How about we do that?
I guarantee you that we probably will on this one.
Every Wednesday is New Comic Book Day in the world of comics. And we like to bring our show kind of to a close by giving you guys, ladies and gentlemen out there in the world, an idea of what, number one, what's coming out that we think might be worthwhile to pick up. Maybe you don't follow previews and you're not looking at what's coming out as regularly. We're going to tell you guys 3 books that are going to hit the shelves on Wednesday.
But we're going to post 4.
We're going to post 4 just because I'm anal retentive and I have formatting issues that you guys can pick up, and you know maybe you love them and maybe you're like, dude, thank you for recommending this to us. Then you fire off an email at southernfriedgeekery@gmail.com and tell me thank you, or tell Craig thank you, or tell Matt thank you, and or maybe you hated it and you want to be like, dude, why would you recommend this? And
why would you recommend Crazy? Why?
Craig is never gonna. He feels so bad about that. Never gonna let that.
It was horrible.
I didn't read it, so
It's true.
You can borrow mine anytime you
no,
want.
thank you.
You can have it, I think.
But there are a number of places that you can hit us up at, and we would love it if you did. Let us know if you liked it, disliked it. Maybe you have a take on it that we didn't. You can do that at all those places. Twitter and Instagram at SFG Podcast on both of those. I've already told you the email address several times. You got the Facebook page. If you're not there, I got to ask you why not. What you doing? Come on, hurry up. So, all right, Craig, what are you grabbing this Wednesday? You want to go first this time?
Sure.
Okay.
This is going to be a big surprise to anybody that knows me. Marvel Comics, Star Wars, Rise of Kylo Ren #1 comes out in the week.
Who are you?
In Star Wars week, we're going to start getting some background on Kylo Ren and how he became who he was, and information on the Knights of Ren. It's Charles Soule and Will Siney working on it. So Charles Soule's, I know Charles Soule gets some critique for some of his stuff, and I've been as critical about some of his work as anybody. But his Star Wars stuff has been pretty outstanding.
Yeah.
And,
I've never read his Star Wars stuff, so I can't say anything about
his
it.
Darth
So
Vader
I
run.
can't take that away from
If you
him.
can recommend anything, it's his
Yeah.
Darth Vader run.
Yeah.
That is amazing work.
Yeah. So I'm looking forward to his take on Kylo Ren, and really we're going to get background on the Knights of Ren. We're leading into Star Wars week, which, Episode 9 comes out Friday.
Yeah.
So I know where
is that this Friday?
Yep.
Really? I didn't heard about it.
That and Witcher comes out on Netflix on Friday.
Okay.
I'm excited for both of those. More excited for Star Wars because I'm me, but I would say I'm pretty equally excited about Witcher if it doesn't drop the ball.
I
Yeah.
don't believe you. I don't believe that you're.
I'm not equally. I'm
Okay.
super excited for Witcher though.
Your tattoos say otherwise,
You
sir.
see that? I know him better than himself. Gabe. Did you see that?
I'm super excited about Witcher though.
That's how we
as
keep
well.
each other corralled.
It's another universe set in Norse culture where you get this badass Viking-like dude just killing people with sorcery, and it's just, I can't fucking wait.
It looks amazing. It looks great.
It looks really good. The battle scenes that I've seen in it, all of it looks really great. Drops on Friday on Netflix.
badass.
Yeah.
Well, I'm going to keep us in the Marvel wheelhouse for my new comic day pick. We're going to have could have a Marvel. Are we going to have a Marvel Rama?
No.
No? Okay. Sadness. I think that you would all do well to pick up Invaders #12. It's the end of the storyline by Chip Zdarsky. And I say this because I also think you'd do well to pick up all the rest of the issues as well. Chip Zdarsky, Butch Guice, Carlos Magno, Alex Guimarães, who's an amazing colorist. This is ending this little story arc. It's been taking place in two different times. It's story of Namor, which why I personally picked it up, and I absolutely love it. His connection with Captain America, the modern world. It ties into some of the things that's going on in the last Avengers story. Just really explores that character. Ties into some Professor X stuff. Really, really well written. You can tell they did their research. Dude, they bounce back and forth in time, and one part's done by Butch Guice, the other part's done by Carlos Magno. They play so well off each other. It's sometimes hard to get two different styles in the same book, but this one just fucking wins all day long. And, I'll take any chance to see Namor and Speedo that I can. So, go check it out.
Zdarsky's doing really, really well with Marvel properties.
Yeah.
He just really is. Any book that he's on in Marvel is probably worth the read.
I likes it.
Yep. So, DC Comics Suicide Squad #1 by Bruno Redondo, Tom Taylor, and Ivan Reis. I've never cared about the Suicide Squad.
I was going to say I was shocked you were picking this up.
Yeah. I'm going to make myself pick this up because I want to see what Tom Taylor's going to do with it. Because I think basically he's earned that chance.
Well, I was going to say, I was, when you read the creative team, I knew it was Tom Taylor that brought you onto it.
Yeah,
Also.
I'm going to make myself. I'm going to get outside of my comfort zone, and I'm going to pick up a Suicide Squad.
I may pick
I'm
this
proud
one
of
up
you.
too.
Look at this.
I may pick it up
Brave
as well.
steps.
Do we want to say that that's going to be our book of the week next week?
We can.
Or we can just do Suicide. We haven't. Yeah, I'm down with it. Let's do Suicide Squad next week.
Cool.
Let's roundtable it. Speaking of Tom Taylor,
Preview for next week.
yeah, sneaky.
Make sure you read it before next Sunday, people.
You have your assignment. There's no excuses. I'm not going to do a spoiler warning. Fuck you. Did you guys read Detective Comics? The Tom
Yes.
Taylor. So Tom Taylor wrote a issue of Detective Comics that's just kind of a one shot, and it just it
was really good.
wow, powerful, amazing.
It was
amazing
the better Batman book written by Tom this week.
How many of these sharp sticks do you carry around with you?
As many as it takes to make him sit over there and grunt and groan.
Break my heart, say you love me again.
I love you, Caleb.
Okay. I don't believe you right now. So go check all of those books out, and then come back, join us again next Sunday. We're going to be back at the same bat time, same bat place. Loving some funny books. Again, connect with us all the ways you can. I know the holidays are happening. You guys are busy. You're doing stuff. We really appreciate your time. Really appreciate your energy and appreciate what you bring to the world, man. It's fun stuff.
Most of you.
Go like 99% of you. Go forward. Love some comics. We love you.
Woo! I almost forgot.
Oh, speaking of Netflix, did you see where apparently this new show that's got Scarlett Johansson and Kylo Ren, the guy who plays them?
Yes,
it's
on
up
Amazon,
for.
I think.
Oh, is it on Amazon? I knew it was on something, but apparently it's up for an award.
It's the spy one.
Wedding Life or something.
Oh, that's a different one then.
Yeah,
Okay.
this one I watched a clip. That movie is so busted. I don't know how it's getting nominated. It's so
There's
bad.
There's a Amazon show coming out with him in it that it's like a spy show.
Okay. Anyway, this movie's so bad.
Are you still recording?
Yeah, I am.
Oh.
It's just, yeah. Anyway, all right, we'll see y'all later.